Mistfall Hunters is a beautiful game that I was not expecting to like as much as I did. Because as soon as I see extraction shooter, or well, it's not a shooter this one, but action adventure game, I expect it to be complicated like Escape from Tarkov. But thankfully it wasn't, and I was able to enjoy it a lot more than I did Escape from Tarkov. This game is a pretty casual extraction game. So the inventory management isn't that complicated. There's auto sorting. When it comes to items, itemizations, the weapons, armors, it's pretty simple. There's like 4 rarities, and they have like 1 or 2 variable mods, but even that stuff is not that complicated. So it's pretty, in terms of itemization, it's pretty simple, but it's still very fun when it comes to the combat, especially the melee combat. At least PvE was very fun. So I started off with the Merc, I think it's called. It's basically a melee guy who starts off with a shield and sword and a hammer. So you get 2 weapons. So you can have 2 different types of weapons. But there are skills you have to pick, so you have to eventually kind of specialize into one of the weapons, or you're gonna be spread thin. Unless you can have enough points eventually to the passive for both types of weapons, but I doubt that would be the case. So you probably had to eventually specialize in one of the weapons. But it's still cool to have because you could have basically 2 swords with different modifiers on them. I played the sword and shield a bit. It was alright. Basically you have to spam the attacks. The damage isn't very good. You have to like use the block, I think, quite a bit, and then it's pretty good. But then I started using the hammer, which was so much fun, like so much more fun. Especially because I think the damage is a lot better, but also basically you can just stun lock enemies. You just like hit them once and then hit a heavy attack, and you can just one-shot enemies, or not one-shot, but you can just kill them before even they get to attack. And the stun locking is fun, I guess PvE, but as I'll show later, it's not very fun in like PvP. Well, it is fun when you are the one doing the stunning, but not when you're getting stun locked. The only way to avoid it is just to do the dash, the shift dash. So you get a dash that has 3 charges, which also consumes stamina. And that's the only way to basically avoid the attacks and to get out of the way and not get stun locked. It's possible when you get more armor and better gear, maybe you don't get stunned as much, and I hope so. Because otherwise the melee combat, or basically yeah, the PvP just turns into whoever gets the first hit, and if you get cornered you just die. They could also make it so you only get stunned by heavy attacks, so it's harder to like stun people. Heavy attacks take quite a bit of time to charge up and, well, hit enemies, so it would require more skill and would be harder to do. Or they could also do something like, if you don't have stamina, that's when you get stunned. So if you're out of stamina and get hit, and I totally understand this is all a skill issue, you could also just say, just get good, don't get hit, I guess, yeah. I say all that, but you can also just avoid all attacks by just shifting backwards, dashing backwards all the time. And unless you run into a wall or an enemy, you can just keep doing that, because the cooldown is low enough for the dash that you can just keep doing it and keep running away. And that is also not very fun. Sometimes you'll run into a ranged character as a melee character, and if they see you first and they're positioned well, they can just keep moving backwards and hitting you. And unless you have a dash kind of attack, for example, the hammer has an attack that does a sprint and then you slam. Unless you have that, you're not catching up to them. I know this game is built around PvP, PvE mix, and there's an economy to sell and buy items. But I do wish there would be a PvE only mode, maybe an offline mode or something you can all play with in co-op with your friends, and it doesn't have an economy and it doesn't really have an online PvP element. Especially in this game where I'm just enjoying doing the PvE, doing the bosses, doing kind of like the mini bosses, the tough enemies. Like, I don't need the PvP to enjoy the game. So I wonder if they're gonna do a PvE only mode. I hope so. One thing I love about the combat is that in a lot of games when you start an attack, especially in games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, you're basically locked in the position where you started the attack. But in this game, you can start a heavy attack, charge it up, and it finishes the attack where you're looking. So you can literally do a 180 if the enemy moves and still hit them. So that's very, very fun. I always hated that in the other games, and in this game I love it that you can just actually change where your attack lands. Since it's a looting extraction game, there's a lot of looting to do. Every single enemy drops something. Most of the time it's some gold or some fight item. And you're killing, I don't know, dozens of enemies every run. And every single one of those enemies, you have to press the interact key. So it was E or F for me. And then you have to wait for the animation to finish for the inventory to open. And you have to do that dozens of times, and I don't understand why they had to do it for every single enemy. They could have just done it for like rare enemies, bosses, and it would be understandable. They drop a lot of loot, they drop rare loot. It's about like 1.5 to 2 seconds animation that you have to sit through. And eventually you just kind of start ignoring the normal enemies. Maybe that's the point, I guess. They want you to just kind of ignore them eventually. So you only pick up loot from like boxes and like rare enemies. And the weird thing is, on top of the animation you have to sit through, there's another level of identification you have to do on top of that in the inventory for rare items that are sometimes unidentified. And I feel like that should be the only identification you're doing. Have the rare items be unidentified when you open the inventory, and you have to sit through the animation for that. Otherwise, it should be instant to at least look at the loot. Guess I should also talk about the skills. I mean, there's not much to talk about. You unlock the active skills by just leveling up, and the passive skills, there's a few trees you can choose from. There's only like 2-3 options per weapon, so it's not very complicated in terms of that, but it's still cool. There's quite a few options for the skills. The active skills, you get 2 of the active skills. They all have cooldowns, not that long. I think it's usually around 6 to 8 seconds. But you're still mostly going to be doing the normal and heavy attack and the combos. The thing that I was not expecting at all from this game was the combo system. So you can combine the light attacks, the heavy attacks, do combos, or just do multiple light attacks or multiple heavy attacks in a row. Sometimes you have to hold the left or right click and it charges up the attacks, and it's very, very fun. Like, it's probably gonna be hard to do that in PvP, but in PvE it's very doable and it's very good. It actually does more damage, it improves damage quite a bit, so it's worth doing. As I said before, the PvP I don't think is gonna be very enjoyable for me, so I really, really hope they do a PvE only mode or some kind of offline mode that I can play, and then I would probably buy the game and enjoy it. I might still try it even with the PvP when it comes out, but I don't think I would play it that long. Usually in these games I get kinda annoyed, frustrated pretty quick when I die in PvP.